Now let me say from the very top of the show, I'm the last person that would ever want to infringe on anybody's sexual desires, sexual fetishes, or anything like that. I'm not a person that goes around and tries to tell people what to do in most respects. However, in this case that I'm reporting on today about the Canadian Supreme Court making sex with your pet, sex with animals okay, as long as they're not penetrated. Well, I'm taking a different stance somewhat. I am actually, in this particular circumstance, on this particular topic, I'm asking you not to behave in this particular type of way. I'm asking you to find another way to find your sexual gratification. Yes, the Canadian court not so many months ago actually came up with a ruling that made it okay, that made it legal for people to engage in sexual acts with their pets. Now, I have not read the whole statute. I have not read the whole law concerning this, but according to the dailymail.co.uk, and the article and information for you to scrutinize will always be in the information description box for this upload. This article didn't particularly say, well, does this law also extend to people who just might find an animal while they are walking in the woods, who have these perverse, very unusual, at least to me anyway, maybe it's not unusual for you from where you come from, but it's certainly unusual to me for people to want to have any type of sexual interactions with a pet, with a animal. Well, nevertheless, what I'm saying is that according to this particular article, in Canada, people actually have these type of urges to be with their pet. And so this is why I'm elaborating on that, because when you take into consideration that a Western Supreme Court has ruled that this is okay for the public, for females and males, it's okay for them to engage in this type of behavior because it is legal as long as the animal is not penetrated. So you have to ask yourself, why in the world would they come to this conclusion? What type of background does these people have in order for them to think that, well, deciding on something like this is not a problem, is not perverse, is not unethical, is not harmful to the animal in any particular way, shape, or form, regardless of penetration. Regardless of penetration. Who's to say that the animal won't be damaged in some way, shape, or form strictly by you just engaging with this animal in a sexual way? Who knows what happens to the animal's soul, the animal's spirit? Who knows exactly what happens to the animal as a result, at the detriment of a human being having any type of sexual interaction with that animal? Who knows? Who can say? I don't know if there's any type of scientific instruments that can be used in order to measure the animal's brain waves or something like that. I mean, I'm not in that field. I'm not in the field of dealing with animals and dealing with pets and using the animals for different type of experiments in order to not only understand animals on a deeper level and also using that research if the animal is a mammal, just like human beings are mammals. If that animal is used like a rat, for example, rats are often used by science in order to come to a conclusion for whether or not whatever it is they are giving to that animal or however they're treating that mammal, they will decide whether or not they can give us something. They can use a particular procedure or what have you on human beings. Because as I said, human beings are also mammals. Who's to say for those who are in this particular field whether or not the animal is being damaged? Well, I, for one, I will say that the animal is being damaged in some way, shape, or form because it is totally unnatural for a animal, for a dog, for a cat, for a rat, for a turkey, for a pig, a horse, to engage in any type of sexual relations, any type of sexual interaction with a human being. So just by taking that into account, I'm most certainly sure that the animal in some way, most definitely, is damaged, or at the very least, the animal is emotionally or mentally challenged. And for those of you who've had pets in your life and you've taken care of pets, you know that animals do have emotions. You know that they do have a consciousness. You know that they do have feelings. So for those who have not become aware of that, or who have not owned an animal, or who have owned animals and have not realized that, well, now you know. My name is Pate, here on the Topkats Rebel Connection, bringing the subject matter to you today about the Canadian court saying that sex acts with pets is okay. I was thinking during the break there, for the musical injection, the musical vaccination. I remember when I was a teenager and a friend of mine brought a video over, a VHS tape. Yeah, a VHS tape. Now, ain't that another world? That's a total different world. We're talking about video cassettes. Anyway, this was either the late 70s or the early 80s. And my friend brought over a tape, and the tape was called Animal Farm. And this tape was a pornographic tape, a blue movie, as we also used to call it back in the day. And this movie called Animal Farm was video recorded in Germany. In this tape was supposedly, allegedly, German people having sex on a farm with different animals. Now, this videotape was about, I would say, 20 to 25 minutes, maybe a little shorter or longer. I don't remember because it's so long ago. And I have to say that I watched this movie from beginning to end. And I don't know, because I was in such disbelief. I was like so astonished that this was even on tape. I was maybe 12, 13 years old, sneaking this in, with my friend during the summertime when we were out of school. And as I said, the tape played to the end. Now, my partner, my friend, brought it over. I don't know if that's leading to something that he may be doing now later in life. Perhaps that's what he's doing. Maybe he moved to Canada because, he heard about the laws. As a matter of fact, these laws that have to do with humans and animals having sexual acts together, these laws have existed since the 1800s. Since around 1860 or something like that, well over 100 years that the laws have existed in Canada that have put in the books concerning people and animals having sexual relations. So I don't know if he knew about that law or whatever, as he grew older and what have you. And perhaps, because of his perverseness, I would think that's what's necessary at the very least to say, hey, let me take this video over to Otis Q. Pate's house and see if we can, watch this together and see what he thinks about this or whatever my partner was thinking, because I didn't even ask him about that. But we watched the video, and I guess the thing is I don't know why I didn't stop the video. I guess because I'm a very curious cat, and I've always been a very curious cat. Even when I was a young cub, I was curious. I am a type of person, as long as I can remember, that likes to learn, likes to get different type of information into my brain, even when it's not healthy, even when it might be a little bit perverse or a lot perverse. It depends on who you talk to, because it's all subjective. It's all relative as far as in comparison. But I was really, really shocked after that, but I didn't make any type of weird gestures or act like I was in disbelief when I turned on the video, because he had actually told me what he was going to put in, and I didn't believe it. It wasn't such good quality, but it wasn't horrible or bad enough for me to turn it off. I remember this video called Animal Farm, and if I think about it now, for the very fact that it was out on the market back in the day, it's very alarming, just to say the least. But we watched that, and that was the first instance that I received, and the knowledge that I gained by that nasty video. I gained the knowledge of this type of thing happening with people, because I realized even back then when I was a very young teenager, I realized that this type of stuff was going on between humans and animals. And of course, as I got older and started reading about Greek mythology and the history of Greece and the history of Europe and the history of many different continents around the world, there are 7 continents, by the way, I realized that, this was not so unusual. And I'm talking about by the time I graduated from high school when I was 18 years old. So I don't know if the Supreme Court in Canada has based their ruling on this information. I don't know what they discussed in their chambers in order for them to come to this conclusion. But I'll tell you what, when you take history, Western history, into consideration, or I should even say world history, when you take world history into consideration, you will find that this is not so unusual for many cultures all around the world. Human beings having sexual acts, engaging in sexual acts with beasts, with animals. And I guess it doesn't really need to be mentioned, with their pets. Anyway, I put together a report for you concerning the Canadian Supreme Court, making it legal, making it okay for their citizens to engage in sexual acts with their pets, with animals. So right after we come back from a little music fascination, I want you to check this report out. And always remember, Topkats Rebel Connection is edutainment wrapped in eclectic music. And I'm always very thrilled that I have friends like you that I can engage in, and that, we can be free thinkers and talk about and discuss, especially in the comment section, different topics that go on in the world. And always remember as well, we are a lot that are part of the minority. Most people I have found are not free thinkers, and they don't just entertain any type of subject matter strictly to learn or strictly because it is something that should be thought about, that it's something that should be discussed. However, that's what we do here on this channel. Thank you for joining me.
Moving on up to the east side and next echelon. Woke up feeling like a brand new Decepticon. Today and now we're about to get it on, and I'm cooking with nothing but tough love and Szechuan. Against the odds while all bets are off, gambling with gunshots and the next to fall, where they move like kings even if just a pawn. While I'm acing the midterm off a no lecture hall. Hey, this professor's old and his words are skeptical. We're only on the same page of the textbook. My brain cells are colliding on busy streets of chemicals. Graduating anything is anything but textbook. Most days there's nothing to show for. It's just me and an empty table at close quarters. A retired samurai fights for no one, content with the thoughts and clouds that flow over. But the day's different, call it a gut feeling, or a case of wide open eye daydreaming. Surfing the tops of speeding cars, weaving traffic in the fabric of the city while leaving buildings. Reloading my cannon just before I kiss it. Oh yes, this evil genius has a few tricks left in him. Even if they all say it's unrealistic, it's hard to wipe the grin off the sadistic.
Like a candle, we melt into the night like a ghost. Soon there will be a time when you'll have to make a choice. We have come to a standstill until you make your move. Careful, we are super villains with not much to lose.
They say I'm finished, but I haven't left the starting line. I got more work to do than sharpen mics. This hip-hop is more than barking by sparking spite and respect, getting broken over hard and pride. You found respect was hard to find. The lack thereof, it isn't too far behind. From a place too dark to shine, we learn to hold on even when our arms are tied. A work in progress, a work in home labor, playing politics, playing our own saviors. Ghetto profits don't exceed the losses when even cops dress up as opportunity knocking. Saving the days like trying to catch the rain while you were turning in your cape. I was taking names, breaking legs, chains, and staking claim. Robbing the rich, singing money ain't a thing. Flying the city without a pair of wings. Flying on a bike without a pair of brakes. It's fair to say we got this arrow aimed like Hawkeye back from the dead, bowling narrow lanes. There's no deep breath before this jump, so call your second cousins, it's about to be a good one. Good morning from the hills to the avenues, entering the day with the fist full of gratitude.
Like a candle, we melt into the night like a ghost. Soon there will be a time when you'll have to make a choice. We have come to a standstill until you make your move. Careful, we are super villains with not much to lose. With not much to lose.
Topkats Rebel Connection can be found at Spreaker.com/Topkats Airborne. That's Spreaker.com/TOPKATS AIRBORN. Topkats Pride, bringing to you the unusual but factual and oftentimes ignored and controversial wild news, keeping you in the know while you're on the go. And now, your wild news reporter, Pate. Canadian Supreme Court rules sex acts with pets is okay. My name is Pate, and this is a little bit of something strange, bizarre, and repulsive, and also off the normal beaten path of the Topkats Pride. This article is from some months ago in 2016, but that does not make it any less important. The case involved a man who was convicted of sexually abusing children. He tried to coach his dog to abuse his stepdaughter by using peanut butter. An appeal court ruled bestiality conviction requires sexual penetration. Animals' rights charities want the law urgently updated to protect animals. And by the way, this story is provided to us by thedailymail.co.uk, and there will be a link in the information description box for you to scrutinize. This bizarre, repulsive story goes on to say that the Canadian Supreme Court has ruled that sex acts with a pet are legal as long as the animal is not penetrated or suffers any form of injury. The case involved a man who had been convicted of sexually abusing two of his stepdaughters, who had also been convicted of bestiality after he attempted to make the dog engage in sexual activities with one of his young girls. A lower court convicted the man of bestiality after it heard he smeared peanut butter on the girl, who was 15 at the time of the abuse, to entice the dog to lick it off. Also, according to this article, the Canadian Supreme Court has ruled on this very, very nasty story. The Canadian Supreme Court has updated their laws, their statutes, which had not been updated by definition of bestiality since the 1860s. Now, as the story goes, the lower court had ruled the man was guilty of bestiality because he had received sexual gratification from the act. However, the man, whose name is not fully provided to the media, but he's known as DLW, successfully challenged the bestiality decision in the appeals court. So, according to the Canadian Lawyer in Law Times, the higher court decided that a strict interpretation of the law, which dates from the English 1861 Offences Against the Person Act, required penetration for a bestiality conviction. According to the ruling, courts will only conclude that a new crime has been created if the words used are certain and definitive. This approach not only reflects the appropriate respective roles of Parliament and the courts, but the fundamental requirement of the criminal law that people must know what constitutes punishable conduct and what does not, especially when their liberty is at stake. This decision reflects the fact that the Supreme Court was forced to work with our outdated laws, and this is according to Peter Sankoff. He goes on to say that although animal justice hoped for a different decision, it is encouraging that both the majority and the dissent adopted aspects of our arguments and recognized that protecting animals is a fundamental societal value. He concluded by saying, Canadians care deeply about protecting animals from this type of cruelty and sexual abuse. People who sexually abuse animals often sexually abuse children, he says, as well. And the accused, the man that we were talking about earlier, DLW, he was accused of doing the same thing. Parliament must step in immediately to fix our outdated laws and protect the vulnerable from sexual exploitation. Yeah, So as I said at the beginning of this report, I find this very disgusting. I find this typical of the concrete jungle mentality. And although Canada has a lot of attributes that I really appreciate, that I've learned about over the years, I consider this absolutely unacceptable. It is my belief that the way a society or culture treats their animals is a direct reflection of that society at the core, not what it's perceived to be, but what it actually is. On top of that, this article provides an excellent example of how just because something is law doesn't mean that it's ethical, and it doesn't mean that it should be law. Besides that, I'm wondering why there wasn't a mass protest by the Canadian people to rebut this decision from Canada's Supreme Court. Since I first heard about this story, way back when it came out, I've been meaning to report this story to you, but there have been much more very important and imperative stories that we had to get out to you that, well, made this particular story fall to the wayside. However, now that I'm reporting on it, I want to say that for women and men in the Canadian society, and for wherever else this type of law exists, if you can't find yourself a sexual partner or a doll or even a robot, which is becoming pretty popular according to the mainstream media, research that. Humans with robots. If you can't find yourself either one of those different options that I just mentioned, to say the least, then there's always masturbation. Or you can even use virtual stimulation for your sexual gratification. Virtual stimulation. For those who are interested in this type of sex acts. However, undoubtedly, pets and animals should be left out of the equation. In the information and description box will be the link so you can go and scrutinize this report. Canadian Supreme Court rules sex acts with pets is okay. My name is Pate, here for you, the Topkats Pride, and the Topkats Rebel Connection. This has been a Topkats Pride Wild News Edutainment Report.